She's like the female James Bond.
She's safety chick.
The safety chick.
I love that safety chick. That's what
She calls
it.
herself the safety chick.
I was a stalking victim, having to learn every possible aspect of personal safety to stay alive.
The safety chick. We love her.
Yeah.
Hey, Kathleen Gallagher, the safety chick here. And you know, every day we see more violent crime happening on our streets and in our neighborhoods. It's happening all over the country. Criminals are being let out of prison at alarming numbers because of COVID and other political issues. The defund the police movement has large numbers of police retiring at rapid rates, and new recruitment numbers are at an all-time low. This means less police out in the communities and response times for emergencies extremely slow. So, what can be done to help protect us against the predatory elements that are roaming the streets of our cities? My guest today has developed a great way to fight back against the bad guys. She created Watch Out Philly, an Instagram account that is basically a neighborhood watch on steroids. Women all over the city of Philadelphia send in photos and details of predators they encounter on the street and provide details to warn others about the potential threats. This has even helped police capture and arrest some of these criminals. Because of the dangerous nature of this content, she's requested her identity not be made public so she can continue to do the amazing work she's doing. I really appreciate you willing to come on the show. I know you were hesitant, but I think the work you're doing is amazing, and it really does need to be shared. So, okay, let's start. How did you start Watch Out Philly, and why?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be able to get the word out about our page just to continue to build our community. So Watch Out Philly started back in November of 2020. And it all started because there was reports on numerous different Instagram pages, Facebook pages, nextdoor.com, all these different social media sites, all reporting the same thing. There was an individual named Steve Diddy, who we found out his identity later, but the same individual was terrorizing and tormenting numerous women all across the city. He did not discriminate in terms of the neighborhood. He didn't discriminate in terms of if you had a dog or if you were in a group. But this man was actually following women. He grabbed a few women, left bruises on their arms, and ultimately was later identified to be possibly connected to break-ins in University City, which is just outside of Center City, Philadelphia. And I saw so many different women reporting that the same thing happened to them, and they thought they were the only one. And because where they were reporting it, whether in different neighborhood groups where unless you lived in that specific neighborhood, you wouldn't be accepted, or maybe you didn't even know about it, they didn't know that there were other women just like them having the same experiences as everyone else. And so I saw it, and I got mad. This page absolutely started because I was pissed off, so to speak. But I remember I texted my friend and I said, hey, if I create this page, do you think anyone would want to know? And would they follow it? And she's like, I would. So I started it. I was like, I'm just going to call this Watch Out Philly, because ultimately what we're trying to do is have a grassroots effort to help our fellow women basically be warned about potential predators or street harassment, because there's so many situations where maybe it's stalking, or maybe they weren't touched, but they're being harassed verbally. They just don't think anyone cares. And so this is a way for us that we can protect each other. So if you see these people on the streets or a suspect that matches a description or a picture, to cross the street, or to avoid that situation, because sometimes you're just walking down the street and you have no idea that that person is about to attack you. It's not like you have that sense sometimes.
That's fantastic.
So that's how we started.
Yeah, that's great. And so this Steve Diddy, after you doing that, tell me what happened to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started, we basically got word that they actually had video of him. You saw him following women, a woman with a dog, like coming right up to this other woman. And I think that being shared and reshared on all the different platforms, we reshared it on ours as well. And I think that is what people ended up being able to associate, that what he's doing is not right. And so we had someone who had put us in contact with an officer that was a community relations and crime prevention officer. And so we started socializing his name and his email address because there were a few people who were stalked or grabbed and had pictures of their bruises. And basically, he wanted to know, any of those victims, to come forward. So we kept basically letting everyone know to please reach out to this officer, that they do care and that he wants to know what's going on. And one of members of our community actually direct messaged me. She DM'd me and she says, "I'm here with the officer now. He'd like to speak to you." And so I said, "Great, have him call me." So I talked to him and he basically said, I had 10 emails in my inbox this morning. He's like, "I don't know what you did in the past couple hours." He's like, "I now have close to 100. He's like, "We had to create a spreadsheet of all these different women who have had the same experience, and we want to reach out to each one of them." Some of them remain anonymous, but for a police report, you do have to give your name and contact information. Can you help with that? And so we did. And then that police officer kept me updated when they eventually, the district attorney needed enough information so that when they arrested him, they could keep him off the streets. And that's what we were waiting for. So it's really, it's sad that street harassment and stalking isn't enough, but it's truly that assault or battery, the physical touch, that is what will keep them off the streets.
It's until he lays a hand on you, there's nothing we can do, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. But within 48 hours, Steve Diddy was off the streets and he still remains incarcerated and in jail to this day.
That is exactly what I was saying, is that this is, neighborhood watch on flipping steroids. Because what, and honestly, how do you think you got, it just snowballed? Because, I start out my organic Instagram. I have, a couple thousand followers. Yours was like, did not take that long to get the word out and get women sending you things. How long did that take?
Right. So overnight, because what I did is I went to those different other sites and basically said, we now have Watch Out Philly. We have an Instagram page. We're really trying to get the word out about Steve Diddy. And then who knows what's next. People just started following and getting their friends to follow. And within a week, we had close to close to 1,500 followers. And then over a period of time, just with the different cases, and when a case resonates with someone or an incident that we report, they'll share it with their friends. And then that ultimately is how we get our new followers. But it's really just building the community. And we're not going to stop until, every woman, man, whoever wants to feel safer follows the page. And that, everything we get is our submissions from our community. Well, and we, of course,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
We ultimately take all the submissions and then we'll ask clarifying questions just to make sure we get all of the identifying features, information, pictures, et cetera, right. And then we'll post it and ask people to share.
And the thing is we talked about this before. You want to make sure that what you're posting is legit. You don't want to get some scorned lover or somebody trying to, slander somebody else saying he did this or she did this, and you're putting something up that, so how do you safeguard against that?
Absolutely. So, people do DM us about their significant others and wanting to warn people about maybe someone who is gaslighting or has abusive relationship behavior. But that is not really our target market, right? We're trying to get the street harassers off the streets and also to, have our, women, our community, avoid those individuals when they see them on the streets. So the idea is that it has affected people in more than one way or more than one person. And in our instance, what we'll do is ask for, description, location, any sort of that type of information. And we'll post it as a story to start because we want to make sure, just like with Steve Diddy, that this has affected multiple people. And when we do that, we also get more information, whether some people maybe has a description, but then the next person who DMs us from that description has a picture or a video. And then we build upon that. And it's those stories that get our community to feel comfortable reaching out. And then that ultimately leads to a post. And then those posts can therefore be reshared. But we always try to start as a story so that, on Instagram, so that people can see it. And then we build upon that before we post.
That's fantastic. So let's kind of go through the various cases and that really blew up into something that was extremely legit. Like, for example, in the next one, you're saying sometimes videos give tips and what to do if you're being attacked.
Yes, absolutely. So in this case, and one thing, I always give an incident identifier, whether it's attack on Addison, which Addison Street is a street in Philadelphia, or something like that, because there's so much overlap of these incidents that when people DM us, we want to make sure we know which incident they're referring to. So we'll always give
A
some
name
sort of identifier,
to right.
a name
That's
to it.
great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something that's like short, sweet. I mean, sometimes a little odd, but something that people be, hey, attack on Addison. I saw that guy down the street, that kind of thing.
Right.
So for this one, the attack on Addison, this woman, this is from someone's security footage that they DM'd to us that we therefore supplied back. She screamed and kept screaming. She was actually, in this incident, this man is actively masturbating as he's walking past her down the street. She's on her bike trying to go home. She turns around once she sees him so she can go in the opposite direction. He therefore turns around and follows her, and you see him running and chasing her down.
Oh
you
my
hear
God.
her on the phone with her mother at the time saying, this is something weird's happening. And then you hear her screaming a blood-curdling scream. And when you listen to it, honestly, the first time I heard it brought me to tears because I was like, this woman is terrified. And ultimately, eventually, like maybe it's a very quick clip, but then he ends up running in the opposite direction. I think because she didn't stop screaming, that is why he ended up
Yep.
going.
That is one of my tips is do not be silent. Scream, yell, do whatever you need to do to draw attention to yourself, because predators really don't like attention drawn to them. They like to do their dirty work quick and incognito and get away without being, found out or drawn attention to. So good for her.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And same with the next story as well. This woman screamed and kept screaming as the suspect was dragging her down the street, and neighbors actually came out. And this is where there is an instance of, in Philadelphia, even though they call it the city of brotherly love, I really don't think that is a
Well, it might not be the city of sisterly love. It doesn't look like.
No, definitely not. Not in this case. But neighbors, so this, for those who go to my page, you can rewatch it, but neighbors come out from where that car is parked. And ultimately, the suspect then runs away. And so, I just want to take the time to encourage people. If you see something, say something, whether it's calling 911, pulling out your phone and recording it, right? And, yelling from a distance, hey, stop, something that people, that this guy would know he's being watched and recorded. These videos and pictures are what get the suspects off the streets.
Exactly. And that's the other thing. See something, say something. I mean, even with all these posts with these women reporting things, pulling out their camera, they're seeing something and they're saying something. This guy's a threat. I mean, that is what it's going to take. Communities and seeing something and saying something are what it's going to take to get these criminals off the street, to lower the rise in crime. It takes a village, it takes a community to do this. It's not just one person or just one police officer patrolling. That it's just too big. So we all need to come together and have each other's back. I mean, this is phenomenal. So the other the next post that I want to go over is, God, there is a ton of issues with groping.
Yes, even more so, and even more recently. So this next post was about an individual who groped a woman. Bystanders actually came to her assistance, but basically he groped her. She yelled back at him, and there was some physical altercation where she ultimately fell on the sidewalk, and some bystanders came to her. And the individual who actually submitted this to us basically confronted this guy and said, "Why did you grope her?" And he just replied back, "It's not porno. It's not porno," about 5 or 6 times and walked away. And this picture was her calling out to him, and he turned around. And so the individual who submitted this was a bystander and wanted to warn fellow women about what she witnessed this woman go through. But he yelled something that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So, in terms of mental health, which we'll get to in a minute, it's not okay, but you still should know this guy's face. So you, as a woman on the street, if you see this individual, cross the street, avoid him. You just know that this is someone that you shouldn't walk by.
Exactly. And again, the knowledge is power, right? Doing profiling and understanding. Wow. And the other, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to keep going with groping.
Keep going.
Yeah. So recently, we keep receiving, these reports of these incidents about teenagers on bikes, and it's groups of teenagers. And, we do have an issue in Philadelphia with, unaccompanied minors riding through the streets in groups of 10, 15, 20, sometimes what looks like 50, 60, kids, teens on bikes. And, they're of all backgrounds, all races, ethnicities, and, I don't know how they're all connected, but they all get together. And these teenagers on bikes, we're getting stories from years ago till now where they are riding up behind women, grabbing them, smacking their butt, grabbing their chest, sometimes stealing things off them, throwing, soda in their face.
Oh my God.
And ultimately the women, because, we had one report that someone said, well, if it was smacked versus grabbed is the difference between sexual assault and not.
I don't know about that. Who told you? Who said that?
Right? The police officer told one victim that. And that's where this is also a few years ago. And I think the whole mentality about street harassment and women being touched inappropriately by strangers, it's not sort of a boys will be boys mentality anymore. So I hope that's not the case.
I do not think that's the case at all.
I hope not. I really hope not. But these women are saying when they go, I've had 3 or 4 different DMs where women say, I reported this to police and they really said there's nothing they can do.
Well,
and
that's the point. That is, with this kind of, with what you're doing gives police proof. I mean, that is what's key, because it's, it's a needle in a haystack to go and say, yeah, there were these boys, they're riding around on a bike. I mean, come on, it's impossible to track that down. No proof, no crime, no identification. So that's why what you're doing is so invaluable for this very thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we always encourage, any of our victims and people who witness things like this, if you feel comfortable and safe, please do video record, take pictures. That's the only way we can identify exactly who these individuals are, because we do know that there are teens and young boys on bikes that we don't know, of that population who's actually committing these crimes.
Yeah, that's incredible. So the other one, the next one we're moving to, which is crazy, is victim intimidation.
Yes. So oftentimes the victim, after we initially post something, whether it's in a story or an actual post, they'll ask it to be removed. And so we have a specific incident where the suspect, the victim, as he was running away, because she was riding her bike in a bike lane, going the proper direction with traffic. And this individual was running, supposedly with another female, but he was running towards the victim on a bike. And she kind of gave him enough space. She went around him and he turned and he pushed her over on the bike and kept running away. And so she picked herself up. She had a couple scrapes, but it wasn't too bad for her to be able to get on her bike, and she chased him down. It took her 2 blocks, but she chased him down and then took a bunch of pictures of him. And then she, reached out to us and submitted his picture and said, I need to identify him. And she put it on a few other different social media sites as well. And they were able to identify him. But because people knew who he was, I believe that some people took it upon themselves to call his employer and say, this is the type of person that you have hired.
Oh, wow.
His LinkedIn account went from active to deleted. And she actually received a notification from his lawyer. And so she was nervous. She was like, oh my gosh, this guy is the one who pushed me down. But I just got a notification from his lawyer. And the immediate fear is also, can I afford to defend myself, even though you're the victim? And so that was a huge issue. So we did remove the original post, but in this case, we identified him. And honestly, I mean, he pushed her. We always have to use the word allegedly, but he pushed her. And so I didn't take down this post because I wanted people to know that we identified him, so that the people who had reached out and DM'd us and provided information knew that it wasn't for a loss, right? That we were able to identify him.
Right. God, that's so frustrating, but I understand it as well. Okay, so the one thing that I have noticed on the site is, and it's disgusting, but I hear about all kinds of situations like this in New York on public transit, is public masturbation. I mean, what is going on? What is going on in Philly, for gosh sakes?
Yes. So often people always say, oh, so many men are seen masturbating in public or playing with themselves. Someone actually, the person who submitted one of these incidents, it was actually a man. He said to me, he's like, there's a man exposing his penis on Henry Avenue in Roxborough in broad daylight. I was driving by, swung around to get a photo. And he basically said, I don't want my wife or children to see that. And so he submitted it to us to help protect his wife and kids and also fellow women. And so that was great in terms of like solidarity to support, our community. But then there is another situation where someone actually was able to get a video of this individual in Rittenhouse Square, which is one of our main parks in Philadelphia. And he has his hands down his pants. He's clearly pleasuring himself while people watching. And when we posted it as a story, we received so many DMs, including someone who was like, that's the man that cornered me on the subway and was masturbating to me until I could get off that subway. So it was a confirmation that he had done this in multiple locations. Well, turns out that's against Instagram guidelines, and either we offended someone, but someone had reported that post, and ultimately it was removed, even though you could clearly see the individual, and it was, his hand was down his pants. You couldn't see any sort of nudity in the video, but you could see who it was to be able to, be warned about him. So if you see him, to avoid him. But that was actually removed by Instagram.
I have my issues. Yeah, really frustrating. They'll let a lot of other stuff go up, but yeah, that's ridiculous. So what other? I mean, this is so incredible how. This is a prime example, as I keep saying, of a community coming together. And there really is a need for this in every city in America. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no question. So what are your plans? Like, how do you see this moving forward? Because obviously you're nailing it in Philly, but where do you want to see this, and how do you want to see this grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely want to grow this to be able to have fellow community members in other cities to contact us. We created a website. It's www.watchout.info, INFO. And basically what we want to do is expand to other cities. And so if there's anyone who would like to help volunteer or be a Instagram page brand ambassador, you can reach out to us through our website or email admin@watchout.info. And we'd be more than happy to, discuss what this would mean. The idea is, there was so much crime in Philadelphia that's been reported on other different sites. We wanted a one-stop shop where it didn't matter what neighborhood you were in, because the criminals don't stay in one spot. They move around. And so we want to create a community where fellow women warn each other across the city. So if you are, if anyone listening is in a city that you believe would benefit from this, I mean, in my mind, I think every city would benefit.
Right, of course.
Yeah, but it takes a little bit. This is not my full-time job. I do this on the side just specifically for the sake of helping my fellow women combat street harassment.
You are a true safety chick. But yeah, I mean, it is honestly, it's wonderful. Your innate passion and, you know, street smarts of understanding how this all worked and what you put together. I mean, who knows, can save countless women from, you know, all kinds of things. Let's expose these predators out there. And I know you were saying, you know, it's still okay because a lot of it is mental illness. There is a lot of mental illness issues, but that doesn't make it any less dangerous at all.
Exactly.
So, you know, it is important. I know that, you know, it is important to report, take pictures, even if the person is mentally ill, because a lot of times the mentally ill people can be extremely dangerous and they do need to get off the street and they do need to get help.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think, you know, between mental illness, any sort of mental disability, you know, there's always such a fine line and trying always to be politically correct, but we're here to protect our fellow women. And we always also use women with an X instead of like woman or woman. It's to become very inclusive, you know, with anyone, you know, inclusive of trans, non-binary woman, you know, we are just here for the community. And
Right.
just like you said, if someone has mental illness or mental disability that is causing or committing street harassment, it doesn't make it right. And we're here for our fellow women. Where we always say we are not a mental health organization. We are not here to, you know, get help for the people who are committing these types of incidents and crimes. We are empathetic with the fact that people do need help. However, that's not what we're here for. We're here for our women. And anyone that commits a crime like this, or any of the crimes we report on, of course, they clearly have some sort of either mental illness or disability going on to think that it's okay to grab a woman, a stranger's chest, butt, and attack them or, you know, masturbate while looking at them in public. If they think that is okay, that in itself, everyone that we report on has some battle that they're fighting.
One would hope. One would hope.
You would think,
but,
right? You would hope.
You never know these days. But anyway,
Exactly.
I love, of course, because I ran across you on Instagram. I don't know if you followed me or I saw you or how, but I'm like, I have got to get her on. I have got to cover this because this really needs to be in every city in America. So I so appreciate you coming on today, sharing your story, and I appreciate you staying in the shadows because of what you do. I respect that, and but just know that I will have all your information on my website as well. So thank you so much for being here today, and good luck with everything.
Great, thanks for having me.
So again, just go to my website, safetychick.com, or Instagram @thesafetychick, Twitter @thesafetychick, and just know that all of Watch Out Philly's information is on there. And anybody that's interested in starting their own Instagram page in their city, please reach out. Until next time.
She's like the female James Bond.
She's safety chick.
The safety chick.
I love that safety chick. That's
She calls
really
herself the safety chick.
I was a stalking victim, having to learn every possible aspect of personal safety to stay alive.
The safety chick. We love her.
Yeah.